Can you hear me now? Oh yeah, you can. It's time to start. Please sit down. Close the doors. Tell people to come in or stay out. Oh. Yeah. Oh. So this is the MPLS working group, first meeting in Prague, July 2015. We have another meeting tomorrow afternoon, a little bit earlier. You have the note well on the screen. I have some, yeah. I can do it like, I can mute there. Okay, try to kill an echo. So you have note well on the screen. Basically it says that any contribution technical contribution you give here is actually considered part of the IETF proceedings. You should also be aware of IPR rules concerning those contributions. So we need to. Can I use this? Oh, this is magic. It works. So, as I said, we have one meeting today, one meeting tomorrow. We have an agenda proposed. It has been posted for almost 2 weeks, but it has been changing a little bit more or less every day. So make sure that you have the latest version up. This is for today. This is for Thursday. It looks like that the Thursday session is a little bit heavier, but we actually expect to have a little bit of young discussions going on today and maybe go over a little bit. So Tarek just started the blue sheets, fill them in, circulate them, and return them to the working group chairs. I actually don't bother to do that. Give them to Tarek. So what we have in the status report today is a little bit about young model discussions. We have a discussion about how to use working group mailing list and a little bit on how working group chairs expect documents to be actually progressed in the working group. I will have an example towards the end of the status report. So, jumping a bit, we have had a couple of errata. Most of them are actually fixed, though I wouldn't be me if I could do things right. So I sent out a re-request on an old one and got a comment that no, this is not right, you need to check something. And I have talked to Dave Allen, who was the author of the document, and he promised to talk to Stuart Bryant, and they should come up with a proposal on what it has to do with Stuart.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, we had a quick discussion. We consider it highly likely that, given there is an ambiguous interpretation, we think it's highly likely folks took the correct one, but we are going to post on the list just to confirm that.
Okay.
And I'll probably do that at some point today.
Okay. Thanks. So we continue to be fairly before the next meeting. I think, no, Deborah, but I think those are all aliens, aren't they? So they have an ISG approval during aliens time or very shortly after. So this is probably the point we say, Adrian, thank you for a consistent work on helping us to produce a huge number of RSCs. I don't know if he's in Rome, but take it to the minutes, or he's sleeping anyway. Okay. Now I have a black. It's kind of three computers communicating with each other, and if one of them goes black, everything goes black. I think it's 16 working group drafts really, rather than 14, because we have 2 new incoming that is not listed as working group drafts yet. We try to to come back with a very short status report, unless they actually go to the agenda. I think after quite a bit of work here and the week before the IETF, we have a fairly consistent number of reports from the working group draft authors. The picture is that there have been a couple of drafts that has been a little other working groups, for example, the MRT draft. But people says that, okay, it's time to start progressing draft just now. If you see a draft that is light blue, and that is the fourth from the bottom, it's on the agenda, so we don't need to talk about it now. We have a few drafts in publication requested, and they should go in daily review fairly soon. So here are the last ones. The draft IETF spring entry label, they are soliciting late input, and they might consider asking for a working group last call. So chairs will the last one on this list is actually saying new version to be published. It's actually new version published, so it should be version 7 just now. But it just happened a couple of hours ago. Okay, so here we have non-working group drafts. We don't kind of hunt down the authors that strictly as they do with the working group draft, but we ask for reports. And there are a number of documents where we have no update, meaning nothing has really happened. We have one draft that is draft we MPLS-TP-MFB use cases and requirements. That one has been ready for working group adoption poll for some time, but actually been incrementally updated like 2 or 3 times. So I hope it's ready to go when the new version is posted. We have one draft, and that's the last one on this list, the ICMP beer, where we need to take a discussion with the beer working group chairs, whether it belongs here or not. I have a feeling that it actually belongs here because it's ICMP. But it could go either way, and I will follow it with interest wherever it goes. Oops. Put back again. Where are we? Can you... This is a technology. So, which one are we? Okay, so this slide doesn't say much more than that we have a number of drafts on the agenda. Well, yeah, that's the one I closed before. Let's see if I can get, yeah, okay. There's one draft that is called Draft Yakov MPLS-20150722-1740. I haven't heard anything about it. If the author is here, or if someone that knows anything about that draft, can you please come and talk to me after the meeting? I think that's it. And here we're starting to go into, we have the Yang drafts, and then we will talk about those. Okay. We have had I shouldn't say very active, but IETF is having meeting more or less at the same time as we have, and we had a deadline for drafts going out I think last week, or maybe the week before. We had a exchange of liaisons with study group 15. And I think they are in their meeting or have just concluded. And we have two new drafts that we need to respond to. Two new liaisons that we need to respond to. You will see the traffic on the list. If you're interested to help us with it, please tell us. There is a little bit of work to do around it. Okay, so now we are at the point where we're breaking a little. So this is not really part of the status report. It's
It's for the status of the process.
Yes, and it's basically. Actually, I haven't had George and Ross to review the slides before we posted them, and they haven't been changed. So either they haven't looked at them or they're happy. But this is my thinking about the working group draft process.
Aren't you just describing the IETF process for good or bad? That's what the IETF process is.
No, there's a we get the.
We have fairly often is that we get the draft accepted as a working group document, then nothing happens. And nothing means no mails to the list whatsoever. Then we get a mail that says, soon to expire. And then we ask the author, what are your plans? And then not too seldom we get the response that the draft has been stable for 6 months now, and it's ready for because it hasn't been discussed. It's just been laying dormant. It could be lack of interest, or it could be whatever. So we have a little bit of advices around how to handle the situation when you are a working group document co-author. So in the MPLS working group, we don't normally appoint editors. We rather believe that everyone listed on the working group document are an editor in one respect or another. We talk about the pen holder sometimes, the person that actually have the XML or whatever format you're working in. So when we go to authors or editors becomes, so actually tendency. I've been a little bit concerned now and then that we are taking technical discussions. There is one type of discussion that there is relevant to take off the mailing list sometimes. For example, language. So if you do a language update, you might take that as nits to the authors. But if you start a technical discussion, then you need to make sure that that is transparent. And the only way of having it transparent is actually to take it on the mailing list. You don't have any other way of doing it. And if you don't reach consensus on the mailing list, the next thing is take it here to the face-to-face meeting. Am I done? So, as working group chairs very often say, our general advice is actually take it to the mailing list. Do you have something on some document, if you are an author or if you have comments on it, send it to the mailing list. And if you don't do that, nothing happens. It just sits there. And you get the soon to expire mail from the secretariat.
So, Lois said we got to take every technical thing to the list. I think that's a little bit overstatement. If authors want to discuss things besides themselves within the team, or there's a design team that wants to discuss them, they are free to do that and move towards a decision. But that decision should be posted on the list for others to comment on before you incorporate it.
Okay, any questions on this? Completely clear, thank you. We will improve the process for the next meeting. Okay. So then we are ready to go for the agenda again. And it's yes. So we start a block of presentations that will actually end up in a discussion, and we allocate a couple of 10 minutes. I allocated 10 minutes for the discussion. We are prepared to go on longer if there is a content in the discussion.
Can we get a volunteer to take minutes just while Tarek is speaking? Thank you.
So hi everyone, my name is Tarek Saad, and the chairs, the MPLS working group chairs, did ask that I compile a report on the Yang activities.
You can take the mic out of the hole.
So what I will be showing you is a compiled set of slides that contain all the MPLS related Yang models, active ones and expired, and overall state status on each. So the objective, like I said, it's to compile a set of related Yang models at IETF, highlight any outstanding MPLS related Yang models that's not been touched on yet, and a plan and directives to active models authors. There's some advice at the end. So the first one is related to MPLS RGPTE Yang model. So there are two drafts that are I presented earlier at TEAS. They are generic models, but once augmented for packet, they become MPLS. So they become MPLS RGPTE specific. And the drafts already cover the augmentation for packet RGPTE. So it'll be related to MPLS working group. The second draft is coming from the Open Config team, and it's MPLS consolidated model. It's MPLS centric, of course. It covers RSVPTE and LDP as well, constrained and unconstrained LSPs. And it's active. It's an active model, so both of the ones I presented earlier are active. The third draft that's RSVPTE related expires in September 2015, and I did reach out to one of the authors, and Dhruv, I'm not sure if he's present, but he indicated that there's no intention to refresh that draft. The next one is MPLS-TE related, and it's already expired. So I guess there's no intention to refresh that as well, because the agreement was the multi-vendor team will come up with a unified model. And the last one was integrated in the earlier draft. So these are the set of drafts that are RSVPTE related. Next is MPLS-TE topology Yang model. This relates to the topology itself of an MPLS TE network. We have a draft driven at TE's working group, which includes a generic TE topology. The packet or MPLS-TE topology is available by augmentation to the generic model. In my understanding, it will be covered with the existing draft. That's the only draft I'm aware of that covers the MPLS-TE topology. Next is the MPLS LDP or MLDP Yang model. There is an active draft driven by a multi-vendor team. It was presented earlier, and it is on the agenda of this IETF session. So it does cover LDP and MLDP. There is another draft which is also related LDP Yang, but it's expired. And I think the authors of that draft agreed to integrate their model inside the multi-vendor model. Next is the MPLS OAM Yang models. We have a couple of drafts here as well. We have the LSP ping Yang config. It's active, it's on the agenda. It covers MPLS LSP ping. The next one we have BFD Yang draft. It's not part of MPLS working group, but it does touch on the MPLS LSP BFD. They have a section, but they haven't defined that model yet. The last one is an expired draft for TP OAM. Not sure if the authors of that draft want to refresh with a new version. Next, there is the MPLS segment routing Yang model. There is a draft driven at Spring working group. It does cover MPLS SR. And they indicated that they will not cover the segment routing traffic engineering aspect. The multi-vendor traffic engineering design team agreed to cover the segment routing traffic engineering as augmentation to the generic traffic engineering model. So that will cover the SRTE aspect. Moving on, there is the MPLS static and MPLS TP Yang models. This work is outstanding. The multi-vendor team has interest in covering these, and if there's anyone who's interested as well, they're welcome, and we can collaborate. The idea of augmenting the existing generic model is also a possibility under discussion. Lastly, there is the MPLS-based Yang model. It's outstanding. The thinking is the XPath that our tree will hang off will contain an MPLS somewhere. And there is still ongoing discussions on what will go in the MPLS-based model. But obviously, the TE, LDP, and any other MPLS protocol configuration and state will hang off of it. At this time, we haven't conversed. So at the end of, to recap my report, there is a routing area coordinators area wiki. I think Loa also sent an email asking the authors of Yang drafts to keep it updated. And there's instructions on how to update the table. And that's it from my side.
So, Eric Erickson, I have a question for clarification. Exactly what do you mean by outstanding some of your slides here?
I meant by outstanding is there is no active draft at MPLS working group.
Okay, thank you.
So Dave Senecrope Erickson, but also one of the Yang coordinators. So thank you very much for including that in your presentation. That was going to be my lone comment, to get the authors to both update the wiki with the status of the drafts, including when it moves from an individual draft to a working group draft, it should switch tables. In addition to that, the drafts that you note, or the things that you noted that were outstanding, there is an area of the wiki to put in intention to create a draft so that we don't have 5 different groups go off and create the same Yang model, only to come back and have the chairs go merge them, right? It would be better to come in with the thing merged. So if there is intent to create those Yang models according to the topics that you had listed there, perhaps you might want to post that to the, there's a section of the wiki called New Yang Models, and you just post the intention of what you want. There's tables formatted there, and it would make it clear to everybody what the plan is.
Yeah, makes sense. Yeah.
Thanks.
Okay. I'm not going to stop you. I'm just going to say that we will have a allocating discussion at the end of after 2 more presentation of drafts. So question for clarification now, and move the discussion after the 2 presentations.
This was just to, Stefan Kowski speaking, just to answer to your question about the attachment of the MPLS. I don't know if you are aware of this, but we are working in RTGWG in defining meta model to see how the model will interact to each other. So maybe the answer will come from the result of our discussion.
Yeah, we would definitely like that. Thank you.
Dave Senecrope again. Just one other thing I forgot to mention before. Those Yang models that are no longer being pursued or have expired and there's no intent to continue them, if the authors can either mark them on the table as abandoned or just delete them from the table, either one is fine. I think I'd prefer having it marked as abandoned, because that way it at least shows the effort was made. Thank you.
Robin from Huawei, add one clarification that is regarding the LDP Yang model and the TE Yang model configuration Yang model proposed by us that has been merged to the multi-vendors Yang model draft. That's one. And regarding the MPLS TP OEM Yang model, that is expired, but that is because that's the personal affairs of the author. So it will be refreshed after the this IETF meeting. Okay.
So one thing, first, it's a question to Tarek, but I don't really expect an answer just now, and we could return to it during the discussion. So you have gone through the existing documents as they are about now. Do you immediately see anything that is missing?
What I noted missing, I put as outstanding. Maybe I missed something, but at least a couple.
No, I don't mean missing in that sense. Not anything that you have missed. I mean, as a working group, are the areas that we are not covering, and that question we should return to during the discussion.
Oh, okay.
So next is someone stole my agenda.
So this is
So
an
this,
update.
for information, this is Greg Morsky from Ericsson.
So bring to your attention update. We've made several changes and extension modification extensions to the model, and provided their example of RPC that based on the feedback that we received, very helpful comments from Law and Nobo, and we would like to invite more comments to that. So if you kindly read the document and send your comments. One question, so this is an example of one of their changes that we made to the probe result. And the probe result is very important because we so far only listed three possibilities of extracting the data from the long-running commands. And we haven't seen it being resolved anywhere that everyone can reuse it, because we believe it's a common problem. And so once there is a solution, or if you can point to the solution, we'll greatly appreciate it. So what are our next steps? We are expecting your comments, and we are welcome collaboration and contributions. Here's the question. So we all know that LSP ping has very many extensions. And one question that we'll like to get input from the working group and from chairs is, where do we stop? So are we covering RFC 4379, or we go on all MPLS LSP extensions that there are? So for us as an offers, this is an open question.
Jeff, the advice I would give you for that sort of thing is, and this is something the working group will have to come to some sort of consensus about, pick the set of extensions that you believe are common at this point in time or likely to be in the next year. Put those as the core portion of the module, and feel free to put everything else that's current in there and protect it using if feature. You will have to decide what is your core set of things. If feature is a standard thing built into Yang that allows you to put it in the module without requiring support from somebody who does not have it. But at the end of the day, past that, you must also design the module so it can be augmented later and changed. So separate things to INA maintenance, that sort of thing. And I will happily help you provide feedback on that.
Thank you.
Himanshu from CNI. I think probably the same point. In LDP, we have done the same. That we use the most useful features that people are using or has been deployed. That's what has been in the Yang module, and not everything that's in the draft. I mean, in the RFCs is in the draft.
Right, understood. The thing is that interpretation of the most useful features in the eye of the beholder. So the working group is welcome to suggest, and then we'll try to, just by some rough consensus, define it everything. But I agree with your and Jeff comment that the model has to be extendable. So whenever we will stop, it should be able to grow.
So quick answer to your question, it has to be more than 4379, like the DD map has to be in there. But it should not, I would think that multicast would be its own thing, and there's other examples of that.
Okay, thank you. So that's probably it.
So can we do the kind of normal ritual? How many read the draft? It's 4 or 5, 6, maybe. Of those who read it, how many things is ready for working group adoption? 4, 5. Yeah, okay. It's a little bit weak. We need to socialize more on the mailing list and have discussion going there. We need to discuss with David and Sin also on the review you are expecting around the time of working group adoption.
So you put me on the spot. Thanks. So David Senecarope, one of the Yank coordinators. If you look at the table, it notes that there's a working group that's expected to own the model, and then the authors and the chairs are supposed to work out what other working groups should be reviewing the model, right? Because, I mean, some of it may be related to, for example, to Lime or NetMod. Is this what you're asking?
I actually have a little bit of an issue with that. I have a number of drafts listed where I definitely want the MPLS working group to be listed as a working group to be consulted or to review the document. So it's not only the author and the working group chair for the MPLS.
Right. Let me keep going.
We need to have a cross-fertilization, otherwise we won't get the...
So the idea is that one working group would be the lead, and other working groups would need to review. But how that's determined is based on discussion with the authors of whatever respective working groups think they should be involved. All right. This is not something the coordinators would go off and do on themselves. It's really between the chairs and the authors.
No, I don't say coordinators should do it. That will probably get to the 50% good result and the 50% bad.
The fact that it doesn't scale is the least of the worries, right?
Now, I'm more concerned about what the process is. Let's say we have one Yang model in PALS. PALS doesn't bother to look at us at all. We need to be able to have the authority to step in and say, this particular document we need to review in the MPLS working group.
My point
that's
my
not
point
clear.
Was there is no set way of determining who should review the draft, or other than whatever chairs think they have a relevant stake should talk to the authors and then put the work group name in the column.
Right.
That ensures that that working group should do a review before that document is progressed.
Just your initial statement was saying that the producing work group should do this, and I think all work groups. Maybe you meant all work groups.
I didn't get a chance to get the whole thing out.
So that was up.
Yeah. No, there should be one group that leads.
Yes. But all I'm saying is that any work group that feels they should be able to comment should be able to.
Yeah. I don't
at
think
least
I'm
request
part of
that, if not insist for.
Jeff, so you may actually have technical help to at least discover the drafts. I forget whether it's Yari or Bill Fenner or something else had a tool for getting the dependencies, the dependency graph of the RFC stuff. You just need to find out where that tool is and basically put in hooks for each of your RFCs that you think is a trigger of, this is an MPLS thing, I want to look at this.
Thanks. Next is the LDP, MLDP.
So we are talking about overlapping Yang definitions, and I found, this is Himanshu from Siena, and this is my personal opinion, but I have found that there is a lot of overlap between I2RS and other working group Yang definitions.
I think we should return this when we open up the discussion.
Okay.
No. Su Feng Lu.
Hello, I'm Su Feng Liu. I'm here to updating the status about the Yang data model for RDP and MRDP on behalf of the design team here. So here are the members of the design team. Cameron cannot come here today for the meeting. So this model was presented in the last IETF. In that session, we already got the model which covers basic RDP configuration, RPC, and notifications. After that, we have weekly design meetings, continue to work on the models. Mostly for the last few months, we're working on the MRDP configuration. So some of us attended a couple of meetings, discussions with the open config design team. So this activity is still ongoing. So we'll continue to discuss with them. We have two new members to our design team. Welcome, Noah and Matthew. Here are the summary of the major changes. And we addressed some of the comments, did some fixes. We based on the last IETF discussion, so based on decision, we moved to the VRF-centric model. So here we also changed the RDP model to align with the VRF-centric model. The configuration to the RDP part has been updated. So we updated the container for the RDP capability and the forwarding configuration parameters. So we also updated the notification to add the flag up-down state. For the most part of our past work, we are working on the MRDP data model. So covers the configuration, notification. Here are the more detailed updates. So here you can see here we updated the capability. So then we have the capability in the at the global level and also at the per neighbor basis. And we added the forwarding attributes to the interface so that we can separate the discovery and the forwarding. The notification for RDP model, we added the RDP flag notification. So here at the bottom, we can see the notification format. For the multicast MRDP part, we have been working on based on those RFCs and drafts. So we did base multicast and we did recursive static MRDP, fast route, hub and spoke. We also did the config RSP, and in the future we'll also cover the in-band signaling also. The structure of the MRDP portion of the data model will look like this. So in parallel to the point-to-point configuration, we have a MLDP container. So we can see at the global level, we have MLDP container, and the capability we have that also, and also same thing to the neighbors and the interface. So at global level, going for the details, the global level MLDP container will contains the P2MP and the MP2MP. We have the configure the LSP configuration here. So for the same thing, similarly, we have expanded the capability to cover MLDP. So we can see a container for the MLDP inside the capability. So which also covers P2MP, MP2MP, and also have a couple of capability, including make before break, hub and spoke, and node protection. So the capability container similarly available under neighbor. The notification for the MLTP also defined here. Then the next step. So we'll add the operational state to both the RDP and MLDP. So we'll continue to discuss with the open config team and do some alignment. We also welcome all the comments.
Robin from Huawei. I need one thing to be clarified. Previous slide, the MLTP previous. Okay, so here I wonder that because that MLDP may be used for some of the MVPN service. If you use the MLDP LSP tunnel for the VPN service, is there any entity for the MLDP SP? That means such as the MLDP tunnel, the configuration this way.
Here the intention for this model, we only cover the MLDP protocol portion. So any service who use the MLDP, so we need to have a different model.
Okay.
Robin, to answer your question specifically, we need to configure both under say MVP and under MLDP. So under MLDP, you need to enable P2MP capability or MP2MP capability.
Yes, but my question is that is because for the RDP, the unicast LSP, maybe you don't need the entity for the VPN service because it just depends on the address. But for the MLDP LSP, so that is multi-destination. So in the ingress, maybe you need some of the entity when the tunnel used for the VPN service. That's my.
So even today, we have to say, even with the CLI, we have to configure.
One moment. No. Come back. I'm not stopping you. I'm just saying that you need to be more careful when you work the microphones. Go close and almost shout. You can't hear you otherwise.
Okay, I think. Okay, I will the offline. We do the discussion, more discussion. Okay.
Right. Sure.
So, any other questions? So, Ina, do you have some information on what happens or what will happen to LDP and the open config consolidated model?
So, we have focused our efforts so far.
Yeah. Yes.
For this IETF, we have focused our efforts on the RSVP, on the TE part of the model. On the LDP part, we had what we wanted to do is to reuse as much as possible the existing LDP model. That is possible to some extent when we had discussion just last night to clarify that. One of the biggest hurdles there is that the operational state is not available in the model today. and we want the operational state to be represented according to the OpenConfig netmod draft. That is with putting the operational state in the leaves. So that each container will have config and the state sub-containers in it.
So if I understand correctly, the operational state is what we start working on Tuesday after the IETF week in our weekly meetings. So they should be coming out fairly soon.
Right. All those operational state parameters will define immediately after this meeting. When we're talking about the style, how do we define the operational state? How the structure look like? I think there's an ongoing discussion between OpenConfig team and the netmod. So we are still not sure which way to go.
Okay. Anything else?
No, the same comment I had before that, if the operational state is not represented in the leaves, then it will be very hard to reuse any part of this model. Okay. It will be not possible to import any groupings and leverage across the two.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
So this is the open mic time. I would like Himanshu to come back and talk about overlaps. That's kind of an interesting thing. But please bring any other questions you have.
Himanshu from Siena. What I was saying before was that as far as the overlap is concerned, what I have found that I2RS Yang model definitions, whatever the drafts that they have, that has been overlapping with the MPLS and L2VPN and other working groups. So there are a couple of people here. We had the T topology draft that was progressing, and we presented in TS, and we had the same issue. We had to work it out with them on what is our area and what is their area. And I think that this is a common problem that's happening.
So, stay there. Lou, you had a meeting with I2RS and TS to try to sort out part of this, didn't you?
Yes, but it was a pretty narrow scope discussion.
Okay.
The discussion was really focused on TE topology in relationship to generic topology. Right now, that work has happened independently in the two groups, where I2RS has a generic topology model, and TE topology was working off on its own.
Okay,
and that was intentional. Now we're trying to align those. I'm not sure it helps in the general.
Okay, fine. So where do we land this issue? Is that up to David and Zane?
Which issue?
Well, if
the one Himanshu brought up, or a more general one?
No, the one. Well, actually, it's kind of a similar thing, isn't it? We have an overlap. We suspect there's overlap in some areas. You sorted yours out, but the rest.
I'll tell you what I said from my working group side, and I'll tell you what I2RS said from their working group side.
Okay.
I said, authors, go figure it out and come back and tell us what you're going to do. I2RS said, chairs, let's get involved. That's so it's really up to both sides to say how to work. So
okay,
you have an I2RS chair right here, so I'd ask him that question.
Okay. For the time being, I think that's fine, but I would like a little bit more structured process around that.
Exactly.
And I think that's where Himanshu is going.
Exactly.
Also.
So, Jeffaz, the process is we are adult engineers, let's work it out. So the people involved that are actually working on the drafts are the ones that are, up to their nose looking at things. The chairs being involved is mostly there to make sure that people are talking together. That's all we're here for. We're not here to necessarily impose deadlines beyond what we already do for charter items and milestones. We're not there to recommend any structured process beyond best practices that IETF is doing. If you think you have a component that needs some personal attention in terms of the work that is going on between the two groups, it becomes work that is going on between three groups. Let's interact as adult engineers, and we'll if there's issues, we can work through those.
Right. And they are being worked out. I'm not complaining about that, but I think you brought up the subject, and I think this is why I mentioned is that why can't we build a process here such that this doesn't happen? That at individual authors level, because they have put in work, we have put in work, and now you have to collaborate and find out where we can resolve issues and stuff like that. Otherwise, if we have a specific guidelines which says that I2RS will inherit the work that was done in MPLS or L2VPN and build from that, then that way there are no two people doing competing things.
Manchu, the problem that we're running into, and this is not just us, this is an IETF-wide thing, and is largely responsible for the reason why I've been talking at all the different groups doing Yang, is that we have to be able to work on things semi-independently because we have subject matter experts in various places. There is large overlapping things depending on exactly which model you're looking at, which includes things like tunnels is another example that we've seen as a thing across the this last IETF. The answer is do the work. Don't try to optimize things prematurely because if you do that, you spend more time fighting about what the general structure is supposed to look like rather than the contents. The contents are the important thing. Everybody can work on things separately. There will be a period of time where we have duplicate data. We will see the duplicate data. The job of ourselves, the chairs, and our Yang coordinators is to notice when this duplicate work is being done and to provide these sort of introductions so that they can be reconciled. But trying to do that work too early just makes things more difficult for the people trying to actually do these content design of the objects. That said, the other piece that you're sort of looking at is who owns this stuff long term. This is IETF. We should not have huge amounts of ego tied up into this. The thing that's going to be complicated is some of these things are going to be base models that others are going to inherit from. The design of the base model hopefully will be generic enough that we'll find a good home for it, whether that is I2RS, MPLS, doesn't matter. They have to be the custodians of the maintenance process that everybody has to attach to it. And whoever ends up writing the modules that are subservient to that are the ones that have to maintain their content and provide the pushback to the general infrastructure maintainer. This will resolve itself over time. It's going to be a little bit messy for the next year plus.
Yeah. I just brought up the point, if you want to make it structured progress.
Thank you. I think I want a little bit more aggressive approach to this than Jeff wants. I want to actually give an instruction to all the teams that are working on models to actually seek out where they might have overlap and actually negotiate with the other author groups. Let's say we don't want to have it from the top. We want to say that we want to be very explicit in this instruction to go to the team and say, you need to coordinate wherever you think there might be an overlap. But and we haven't heard that so far.
How is this different than any other draft that would overlap multiple working groups?
No, it's not a draft that it's over. It's modeling, and there's two different models occurring.
But even if it's a draft, George, the draft, we've had drafts in the many drafts in the past that have had overlap scope with multiple working groups, and the authors go to each of the respective chairs and figure out what their stake in the draft is, and then coordinate across the different working groups to get the thing progressed. I don't really see this as anything different. Matter of fact, we've actually provided a facility to help them get through that by listing out the different groups that they're coordinating across and then making sure that they track to make sure that every one of them is going to sign off before the thing is progressed.
Okay. But we would like the authors to, A, make those chairs aware, and B, try to work it out among themselves if possible.
I think David, you are a little bit optimistic. Because if I actually listen with the actual team that are working with the models and with the drafts, they don't have the clue.
Well, all right.
So the message is not getting through. That's what I'm saying.
Okay, so one, thank you for calling me optimistic, because that's a first for me. But the second is, if the message is not getting through, then maybe that is, like I said, if the process is the same as any other draft that crosses working groups, and maybe that's the message that the chairs need to kind of convey to the authors of these models, right? Is coordinate this. I mean, we're here to facilitate it. We're not here to do it for them.
It's Lou. I think it's a little more difficult than normal just because there's more overlap. But I think the direction to the people doing the work is go do your work. Focus on getting the work done that you need to do. Figure out the problems you need to solve. And when you become aware of someone else doing something similar, let the chair know and ask the chair what to do. And then the chair has to look to see whether or not it's time to try to synchronize those efforts, or to say, keep working on your own, and in a little bit we'll talk. Or in a little bit, come back to us. And that's exactly what we did in the two topology cases when it first came up, that the guys working on TE topology said, hey, there's these other guys, should we go synchronize with them? I said, no, they're just getting started. Let them go for a while, you go for a while, and figure out how to solve your stuff, and then we'll worry about how to optimize. And then things matured a little bit, and they said, okay, let's try to optimize. So it's not that the chair shouldn't be involved, but I think the folks doing the work should focus on doing the work, come to the chairs when they see some overlap. Chairs then decide whether or not it's time to try to resolve that overlap or keep things separate. And we're not going to always get it right.
Another way to put this is don't get too upset over who owns something. You'll start to look like another standards organization that we don't want to name.
Just one other point. I mean, to Lou's point about letting people get started, there is a facility or a place on the wiki for people to announce their intent to create a Yang model. So if there is overlap, they should be caught fairly early on if people are diligent about announcing their intent to work in a particular area. Those that are interested can kind of sign on and say, hey, I got some interest in this area. Let's not duplicate our work.
Lou. Of course, I would say just the opposite. Let people go and get stuff done and not stop just because someone put their name down on a list and they're not producing anything or they're not producing anything of value. Yeah. Okay, I'm sorry. Apparently I misunderstood I misinterpreted what I heard. My mistake.
I have a question for David. Dave?
Go ahead.
Has the issue of needing two groups validly needing different views of the same thing ever come up in terms of, not in terms of configuration, but in terms of the ability to read?
So two groups that have opposing views on the same model in terms of direction?
Just need to view the data in very different ways and need to be able to do that rapidly. Well, I'm talking about Ina's concern that the status is in the leaf and she doesn't want it there. Is it valid to build a separate model that could go?
I personally have not seen that, but then again, I'm not looking at these models from a micro level like that.
But I'm just wondering if there's something from the, one data item goes into one Yang model, or is it possible to have read views elsewhere? Just a question.
Yeah, short answer is I don't know. So
okay.
Or it'd be.
I will consult with Benoit.
It would be yeah. I mean that's definitely something that you want to bring to Benoit, but it would also be a discussion of working out where the best place between the two opposing views, working out where the best place to put the attribute is. Right.
Okay, so we let Greg ask his question.
No, it's probably not a question. I think it's a very good discussion because it brings out to their group where to look and what to check. And I just want to give it as an information and reminder that we have the line working group which chartered to do common OEM data model. And that will include MPLS-TP and IP MPLS-OEM. So as you been pointed out, yes, their draft on MPLS-TP OEM expired, but the offers are intended to continue the work. And we were intended to start MPLS-OEM. So I would, and at the same time, so presenting LSP-PING model, which is a part of MPLS-OEM model as well by itself. So I just would like working group to pay some attention to work being done in line.
Tarek, yeah.
Tarek from Cisco. My question is, the models that we've seen so far are modeling the control state, MPLS control state, using the signaling protocol. We haven't yet touched on the data plane or FIB, MPLS FIB state. One possible way to model that is an MPLS-based module. I wanted to get feedback from the working group if they think it should be something that is common for all protocols. It's the FIB state basically. It's protocol independent state.
Well, it's not protocol independent really, but it should be common for all MPLS. So,
I agree.
Yeah. But this, I think you have to kind of start some discussion somewhere and as soon as possible get it to the list so we actually have a proposal where we're going.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. That was clear to me. Kind of both giving me a bunch of new information that was really interesting also. Thank you. Next is Santosh. You have the...
Okay, so I'm Santosh Saleh from Juniper Networks. So in this presentation, I'm going to talk about faster route for node protection for LDP-based level switch paths. So the central idea is to provide topology-independent local protection. In a sense, the idea provides local protection in any topology as long as we have an alternate path in the network that avoid the failed network resource such as a link or node. So today, many service providers deploy LDP to establish transport LSPs in their network. These transport LSPs are confined to single IGP routing domain. The services that rely on these transport LSPs depends on the connectivity. That is, these transport LSPs provide connectivity which is essential for the services. Therefore, any disruption in the network results in the disruption of the services. We clearly want to minimize service disruption, and in order to minimize service disruption, we need to minimize connectivity disruption. And in order to minimize connectivity disruption, we want to rely on the faster route technology. Clearly, in any network, there will be both link and node failure, and the faster route scheme needs to take care of both link and node failure. And so it is totally unreasonable for a faster route scheme that constrains a network topology. Service provider should not design their network topology to accommodate a particular faster route scheme. It should be the other way around. The faster route scheme should be able to accommodate any network topology. Therefore, the solution needs to provide topology independent local protection. And additionally, We also need to minimize the additional provisioning and configuration required to deploy this feature. So these are the building blocks that are needed for TIFRR. PLR, a node which notices the failure of downstream link or node and begins forwarding traffic towards the merge point using a bypass LSP. The next one is a merge point. Any router on an LDP signaled LSP, so long as the path from that router to the egress of the LSP is not affected by the failure of the network resource. So we've seen a PLR and merge point. The next building block is a bypass LSP. LSP from PLR to the merge point, protecting the link or node. The LSP is established prior to the failure. This presentation assumes the use of RSVP protocol to establish this bypass LSP. And finally, the PLR also needs to obtain the label mapping from the merge point. The label mappings are obtained prior to the failure, and once the PLR detects the failure, it swaps the incoming label with the label from the merge point instead of the label from the next hop, which LDP does. So TIFRR provides both link and node protection. So let's talk about link protection. So we just seen the building blocks for TIFRR. So this is an example of how those building blocks are used for link protection. So in this topology, consider a LDP LSP from R1 to R7 via R2 and R3. Further, suppose we want to protect the link between R1 and R2. With respect to this link, R1, which is upstream of this link, is a PLR, and R2, which is downstream of the link, is a merge point. A bypass LSP is established from R1 to R2, avoiding this protected link, which goes via R4. And the label mappings are same as prior to the failure, because in this case R2, which is the next hop, is also a merge point for link protection. So this is a working example of link protection. For LDP LSP from R1 to R7, which is indicated by the red arrows, the labels are distributed in the reverse direction, which is indicated by the blue arrows. In the steady state, the traffic flows from R1 to R7 via R2 and R3. In the event of a protected link failure between R1 and R2, R1 begins forwarding traffic on the green bypass LSP via R4 to R2. And this is done for all the LDP LSPs that traverse the protected link. So a single green bypass LSP protects all the LDP LSPs that traverses the protected link. Now let's talk about node protection. So this is not a whole new thing. We have pretty much the same building block, and they pretty much iterate the same way. The PLR is same as link protection, where it is a one hop upstream router from the protected node. And the merge point is a little different. It is not the next hop in this case, and I will talk about it in the next few slides. The bypass LSP is from PLR to the merge point, avoiding the protected node instead of a protected link. And the label mappings are different because in this case, the merge point is the next hop and not the next hop. Now the question is, how many more label mappings the PLR has to maintain with for node protection? First of all, you should advertise only the loopback of all the routers in the network in LDP. Second, the PLR should obtain these label mappings from the merge point using downstream on demand rather than letting the merge point flood all the fact label bindings to the PLR. And finally, the merge point by itself doesn't need any fact label bindings. It's just the PLR which needs it. So overall, we just need twice the number of fact label bindings on the PLR and no more. So let's use the same example that we use in the link protection to determine the merge point for node protection. Now again, let's consider a LDP-LSP from R1 to R7 via R2 and R3. And suppose we want to protect the node R2. With respect to this LSP, R1 is a PLR and R3, which is the next hop from the PLR, is the merge point. The merge point, if the protected node R2 is not an ABR, the merge point is discovered as a part of same SPF computation. So we don't need to run any more SPF computation to determine the merge point. If you contrast this with present solution LFA and remote LFA, they run multiple SPF computation and still we don't get 100% coverage.
Santosh, 2 minutes.
Okay. And right. So this is the last missing piece in node protection. What happens if the protected node is a ABR? Now let's consider a LDP-LSP from R1 to R9 via R2, R3 and R7. And suppose we want to protect the node R3, which is a ABR. The PLR R2 cannot determine the merge point R7 from this SPF computation because the PLR and the merge point are in different IGP areas. So in such a case, the PLR uses the alternative ABR as a merge point. The alternative ABR is defined as a ABR which advertises into the PLR area the reachability for this prefix. So this is a working example of node protection when the protected node is not an ABR. In the steady state, the traffic flows from R1 to R7 via R2 and R3. And in the event of node R2 failure, R1 begins forwarding traffic for all the LDP-LSPs on the green bypass LSP via R4 to R3. Now, the same bypass LSP is used again to protect all the LDP-LSPs that traverse R1, R2, and R3. Now, there has been a long-standing perception that we need to configure each of these green bypass LSPs manually. Definitely, it's very cumbersome and it's extra burden for the operators, and it's difficult to deploy. So that's why all of the things that we need for node protection can be done automatically. So all the bypass LSPs and all the TLDP sessions can be done automatically as described in the procedure in the draft. So in the beginning of the presentation, we laid some requirements and throughout the presentation, we've seen how to achieve those requirements. So overall, the TIFR provides link and node protection for LDP-based transport LSPs using RSVPT bypass LSPs, which are signaled automatically. The RSVPT bypasses can be traffic engineered using variety of constraints. We can use a global template to apply those constraints. The solution places no restriction on the network topology. If you compare this with LFA and remote LFA, it places certain restriction on the network topology. Additional provisioning and configuration required is fairly small. It could be as small as a single knob, which will trigger the mechanism for both link and node protection. And we rely on the existing IETF standard to signal the RSVPT bypass LSPs and also to establish the TLDP sessions. And the same solution can be used for both MLDP LSPs and LDP LSPs, so it's simple to deploy. Same solution both for LDP and MLDP. So with this, I come to the end of presentation. Comments, questions, suggestions.
Robin from Huawei. I think this is a very interesting solution. Yeah, this is using existing mature technology solve the LDP fast reroute issue. I think this is practical. But I think from my point of view, maybe this is a pity for the CRLDP. If the CRLDP is here, so that one protocol can finish this work. But now that we have to use the LDP and the RSVPT together to finish this work.
Yeah, we use the most deployed protocols. Stuart.
I'm trying to understand what's new in this, because we've been talking about most of what's in here since the early days of fast tree route, both in this group and in RTGWG. So I'm trying to understand trying to crystallize what is new. And the second thing is, what about loop prevention? Because you still have loop prevention problems to address to get a complete solution.
Right. So to answer to your first question, the procedure defined in this draft let you to discover the next hop and the merge point automatically. So as I said, both the RSVP bypass LSPs and the PLDP sessions are signaled automatically, and we have defined the procedures how to do that and how to figure out your merge point. And to answer your second question, right, I mean, it's a property of RSVP LSPs versus hop by hop LDP LSPs, and it will have micro loops, so we can't afford that. It's property of LSP.
Hey, to answer Stewart, Luyan, to answer Stewart's question, the beauty is not new. It's existing toolkits.
This is actually a take it to the list moment. We need to go on, otherwise we won't finish in time. Thank you.
So please go through the draft and send your comments to the mailing list. We'll be happy to receive it. Thank you.
Chandra?
Hi, I'm Chandra from Juniper. So the draft MPLS RSVP RA RSVP FRR is actually not a new draft. The old name of the draft was Enhanced FRR Bypass, and we already have probably an additional draft on FRR enhancement. So, and since the goal of this draft was to actually make RSVP FRR refresh interval independent, so we actually did a name change. So this was presented in IETF 91 and IETF 92. We have one change in author. Tarek Saad has actually been included as author. So I'll just very quickly go through the history of this work. The work began because we already the benefits of making RSVPT refresh interval independent is actually quite well documented. It's documented in RFC way back in RFC 2961, and we actually do have good experience on understanding of what should be done to, and it actually has immense benefits. And now, given that we have to make RSVPT refresh interval independent using RFC 2961, the goal was to find out is there any aspect of a well-deployed functionality in RSVPT that actually breaks if we actually increase the refresh interval. So that was actually how the work started, and so we actually in the previous version of the draft, we suggested some minor extensions to actually fix the gaps in RFC 4090 that actually were dependent on short refresh intervals. So and from the previous version of the draft that was presented in 92, after 92, we actually have actually no change in the logic or the procedures, core procedures of the draft. We actually just have two changes. The first change is in actually how a node concludes that it is a merge point. So previously we were using RRO flags, flags in the IP route subobject of the RRO to determine whether a node is a merge point or not. We have actually changed that, that part to use the summary FRR bypass assignment subobject that's actually introduced in the summary FRR draft, which I think will be presented tomorrow. Okay, the reason why we did that. So the path RRO flags was actually sufficient to for a node to advertise that it has link or node protection available. The additional benefit that came in from the summary FRR was that there is also a binding of the protected LSP to the bypass LSP, so we actually but the rest of the procedures of refresh independent RSVP FRR actually did not change. Because one of the primary aspects of making RSVP refresh independent was to actually couple the state of the LSP to the health of the hello session. So in the case of unprotected LSP, it's to the p-hop router. If it's in the case of a node protected LSP, it will be both p-hop as well as the p-hop router. So that part of procedures, it's unchanged. The other aspect of the procedure that actually changed was how a node advertises its support for these extensions. It's actually the goal of the thing was when we propose these extensions, to make sure that we actually, when this gets deployed in the network, the providers will be able to derive the benefits incrementally as they deploy the new version of, say, a software that actually supports these extensions, rather than requiring all routers on an LSP path to actually support it. So for that, we needed some form of a capability advertisement, and the previous version of the draft actually used it actually we use a different bit. We just are using the bit that is defined in draft PRMT scaling recommendations to do that. And that is, I wouldn't be going in detail, but those procedures are actually used to actually will let a router know whether it has to use the new procedures defined in the draft or use the existing procedures to do normal refresh timeout. So with this, what would happen is you may have an LSP path where if you have some islands of a network that has deployed this extensions. So the LSPs that actually traverse those part of the network would actually use the refresh independent procedures, which means the refresh interval between those hops would be large, whereas the parts of the network in which the extensions, the software does not support the extensions, will use a normal 30-second refresh interval. Next step, we request comments, and we also request the working group to actually adopt this as working group document.
Okay. Can I see how many actually read the draft? Let's say fair number. Okay. How many things is ready to become a working group draft? It's slightly more. Sorry, it was about the same. Okay, so the shares will take a look at it, do a share review, and then through the MPLS review.
There's a codependency with another draft that will be presented on Thursday tomorrow.
Yeah. Okay. Any questions? Quick? No? Okay. Oh, you know. No, they're leaving. Okay, so Stuart, up to synonymous labels that you're going to rename, I understand.
Right, so I briefly introduced this. Is there a pointer as well? Right, so I briefly introduced this at the last IETF, and since then, the authors of two competing drafts have agreed to pool their resources to produce a single solution. I put out an early version that the working group didn't see. There were a number of review comments, and as a result, and I think I've pretty well got all of the review comments in it. So this is my best effort at the combined work of all of the authors. So next slide, please. Oh, right. So the origin of this work is a problem that occurs when trying to do RFC 6374 measurements in an MPLS network. Now, 6374 was just a mindset of MPLS-TP, which meant that there was only one possible path between source and destination, and that there was only one source. So we have a number of problems when we try and use 6374 type measurements in regular MPLS. One is that there is no source discrimination. That is to say, there's no information in the MPLS as to where this packet came from. And what you need to do is to reconcile source-destination pairs in order to find out what's going on. But it turns out that there are some other problems that you need to be aware of. One is that if you have any ECMP in your network that could affect the group of packets you're trying to measure, then the OAM measurement packet can get out of sync with the data packets, and so you have an error or an accounting error that is large compared to the tiny losses that we're trying to measure. And finally, and then there are some other synchronization issues that don't immediately appear until you actually look at how you'd really build one of these things, because quite often the packet can come in on a different line card, and you have to do synchronization across line cards, which is kind of a hard problem, or internal synchronization, depending on how a particular packet is processed in a particular implementation. Sometimes there are multiprocessor implementations of the forwarder, which makes this a hard problem. So we came up with this idea of synonymous labels, which is a solution to a well-known other piece of technology, which is packet batching or packet marking, packet coloring, in order to solve these synchronization problems in packet loss measurement. So we came up with the idea that a synonymous label is a label that causes an egress LFR to perform exactly the same forwarding function that it would do, except that it's going to do an additional action. Notice I've generalized this from increasing a counter to, if you're going to have these things, if we're going to have these things, then there are some other interesting things we might want to do as well, and many of the same mechanisms apply. So the obvious action is to increment a counter, but it might also equally be to log a packet or some other thing. I've got some other suggestions on the next slide. Now, the interesting point about using a synonymous label, an ordinary MPLS label, to trigger a particular counter associated with a particular flow, is that most MPLS implementations already have the notion that there is a counter bound to a particular label. And so in the basic OAM application, most hardware can already do this. We just need to assign a different label to count a different batch and not respin hardware, which is a major saving. So what else might we do? We might want to record this packet. We might want to use this as a hint for IPFix to take a look. We might want to use it as a way of steering the packet off somewhere for DOS protection or something, or we might want to trigger some DPI. There are a huge list of actions that we want to do, and the same mechanism for signaling underneath the principal control layer that you need to do something special about this packet, which is otherwise this label, which is otherwise to be synonymous with a normal forwarding operation, is something that we should think about further. So when we have an application label, it's really pretty simple. What you do is you create a synonymous label that's a direct replacement for the application label that triggers the properties that you're looking for. When it's an LSP label, it's a little harder because you don't really want the core of the network to know you're doing this. You really want to do this just at the endpoints. And so you kind of get pushed into a position where you have to add an extra label to the label stack. The synonymous label could be described as being synonymous with explicit null. That is to say, you put a virtual explicit null in there. Its property is simply to increment a special counter or to cause some other behavior on that packet. During review, it was pointed out that there is another case that we hadn't thought about in the early piece of the work, which is when there are really too many application labels for this to be viable. That occurs, for example, when the application label is specific per egress on a router, which is one of the ways that you may choose to implement your router design. So the next hop has its own application label. Or it may be that for some other reason you want to batch all the pseudo wires in a group, or you might want to batch some other group of VPNs for some reason. But you don't want to allocate a label for each. And so that kind of forces you to put an aggregation label in the stack if you want to go that way. And whether or not, we need to decide whether or not this is within the sort of set of synonymous label actions, but it does seem that the same mechanisms would work, and so we should probably wrap this all up together. Need to think about ECMP as always, because the addition of a synonymous label will impact the ECMP behavior in most implementations. There are two solutions, well, three solutions actually. One solution is to use the entropy label mechanism, which effectively sterilizes the SFL. Another mechanism is to always put the SFL there. So if you think you're going to instrument the packet, then instrument it this way. Well, the other alternative is if you're really worried about it, then don't use the mechanism if neither of those solutions work. So what do we call this thing? The original suggestion by George of synonymous, I think, is actually perfectly fine, because when I looked it up, it actually has a looser definition than was proposed in this working group last time. If we want to call it shadow, if we want to call it associate, if we want to call it, there was another S word that someone had. I don't mind, really.
Surrogate.
Sorry?
Surrogate.
Surrogate, that's it. I don't mind what we call it. All I would like to do is to build this piece of particularly useful functionality. So what are the next steps? We need to revisit the requirements draft Bryant MPLS flow ident, to see what the overlap, to make sure there's a complete overlap between the requirements that we had then and what this draft, the solution draft does. And we also, I think, need to make sure that find out whether there are any other requirements that we've realized since we wrote it. And then we need to decide whether we continue with that requirements draft or whether we merge it in with this, or whether we say that was just an exercise in finding out how to define the solution and let the draft die. And I'm looking for guidance from the working group.
Stuart,
yep.
I have a comment on that. I'm fully prepared to let the draft die.
Yes.
But I would let it die as a working group draft. So I think you should go for the procedure actually making it a working group document.
If you would like me to make it a working group draft, I will make it. I will go through the process of doing that. I really don't mind what we do. I'm looking for some guidance. Any of those approaches would seem reasonable.
This being a requirement document, I want the working group to have the revision control of it, because
I'm perfectly happy to hand any of these these documents to the working group.
Then I have another comment before that. So you say correct and complete. I'm actually more concerned about correct than complete, because completeness can be added later, but correctness is pretty hard to add at a later stage.
Well, unless you design a solution around an incomplete set of requirements.
I understand, but when you start building the solution, you will see if there are requirements are complete or not.
So I take this as the advice from the chairs is that the authors should take a look at the flow ident, and then we should request it for adoption, and then that will A, run a review process, and B, we can decide what we're going to do with it as a community.
Yeah, that works for me.
Okay, right. Thank you. Then obviously we need to decide whether the synonymous label draft is the right approach, and we need to call for adoption if it is. In fact, maybe I should call for adoption as a way of finding out whether people are happy with it. Luan?
Yeah, Luan, Microsoft.
Could you speak close to the microphone? I can't really hear you.
Small comment on the ECMP. You listed two options, right? This label or the entropy label. There's a third option. Usually we see if we don't have anything fancy, leave the label IP hash.
So we either say it's not a problem. You either say it's not a problem, or if it is a problem for you, you've got two choices: entropy label, which sterilizes the other labels in the stack from an ECMP hash point of view, or you always send the data stream with the synonymous label in it, so that it doesn't impact ECMP.
Yeah, I'm commenting just on a third option. If you don't do those labels, if you don't have a very deep stack, you can hash it at the IP level.
So I can't quite. I'm a bit deaf still from flying. What's your suggestion for an alternative?
You look under the label, use the IP header as usual, hash it, go.
Oh, yes, yeah. Okay, yes. But some implementations do that, some don't.
Okay, that's the implementation issue. Yeah, I mean, mostly chip vendors saying that's easily done, but of course nobody can do it when you put a long list of labels.
Yeah, the payload may not be IP though.
Yeah, that's a separate thing. Most application in our environment is IP.
Okay. So that really defines, if you're load balancing on the IP label, that really, from the point of view of this draft, defines it as a non-problem. If you're in a system where it's load balancing on the IP header and not on the label stack, it is a non-problem. Okay, so I should add that comment to the draft. So I got to the point where really I need to decide how much more work to do before asking for this to be adopted. And I'd like to take guidance from the chairs on that, please, on or offline. And then finally, we need to have a discussion about the control system. Did you want to respond on that, George? We can take it off. Finally, we need to have a discussion about the control system. I put together a control draft when I brought this here at the last IETF meeting. But I do think the control system needs a bit more work, and I need to understand what control we really need to understand what the requirements for the control protocol are. Is it completely freestanding? Should it be baked into one of the existing control planes? Are we going to end up putting it in all the control planes? The point of the draft that I brought last time was to make it independent of the control planes, which would make it a lot easier to implement and deploy in practice. So I would like some feedback from the working group on what the control plane requirements are. And I think that's it. Thank you.
So, questions? Probably not. How many read the draft? Okay, best number today. Since you're not asking to making it a working group.
Well, go on. Why don't we just ask to make it a working group? See what the consensus is.
You want me to ask how many things is ready to be a working group draft?
Yeah.
Okay, how many things is ready to be a working group draft? Okay. There is some discussion between the chairs and the procedures before we actually go there, but fairly soon, I guess.
Okay.
I think we're done for today. Thank you, Stuart.
Thank you.
Before we end this, I have one thing I want to tell you. The spring working group are calling a document for working group adoption, and it's called Draft Phil's Spring Segment Routing LDP Interop. And I read well, I haven't really. I read half of the draft so far, and I think it's of interest for the MPLS working group, and you should look at it. So this concludes the meeting, first meeting in Prague. See you again tomorrow afternoon. Went pretty well. 3 minutes. I think. And then just to make sure of that, instruction. I don't think the problem is you sent a mail to the routing area, and you found out that you were not on it today. But yeah, so if I look at, you remember I said that. Yeah. So what I'm saying is that if I look at the 16 people on the LDP team, they are not all on it. So what I'm saying is that the channels we have to get the message out to the people that need to do the work doesn't really work. So we need to figure out how to actually do that. Maybe I, as a working group chair, should actually pick up all my